A village in a cemetery. One day, I was on my way to a friend's dacha. It was an ordinary working Friday, and by evening, anticipating the taste of shashlik and beer, I was already rushing by car on the highway from the city towards the dacha. It was not far, just 30 kilometers from the city, and I knew the road by heart that I could get there with my eyes closed. Nothing complicated, almost all the time in a straight line, and only at the end of the road you need to turn towards the village of Grafsko, and there it is a shortcut. On this day, it was raining with thunderstorm, and visibility of the road was bad, so I drove slower than usual. I didn't want to get into an accident today. Halfway down the road, I hit a traffic jam. Where could it have come from on the highway? After 2 hours of snail's pace, I saw the cause of the traffic jam. Road repairs. It's like always. As I drive, it's always an adventure. Road repairs. Accidents. Well, we'll have to take a detour. And how fortunate. Just before the barriers that the workers put up, there's an exit to a country road and a sign saying that there's a detour through the village that way. Hmm. The sign was so old you couldn't read the name of the village. Well, maybe it's not so bad. I'll stay a while longer, avoiding the repair work, and then I'll fly to my friends. When I left the road, I noticed that only I decided to detour. All the other cars immediately turned around and drove away towards the city. That's weird. Maybe they know a shorter way? I was already on a dirt road, and I didn't feel like turning around. There were no streetlights on this road, of course, and the road was old, and it was obvious that cars rarely passed on it, but it was hard to see because the rain had washed out the road very badly. I wish I hadn't gotten stuck in this mire of earth and clay. It was difficult to drive, especially on my not new car, and now, in the distance, the roofs of houses appeared. The time was already past midnight, and the rain only intensified, turning into small hail. Great. This was just what I needed. It was almost impossible to continue on the road in such weather, so I decided to call my friends to say that I would arrive only in the morning, and I would try to spend the night in this village, hoping that someone would take me in. I took the phone in my hand. Of course, no signal. It's the 21st century. And if you turn off the main road a couple of kilometers outside of town, you're in the Middle Ages. Well, I hope in a drunken frenzy my comrades will not look for me in the middle of the night and just fall asleep, and in the morning I'll come to them. I drove up to the first houses. Apparently, this village consisted of one road with houses on the left and on the right. Speaking of houses, they didn't look very habitable. I didn't see what happened to the other houses, but the first two shocked me a little. To say that they were old was not enough. They were dilapidated, decrepit, overgrown with impenetrable thickets of some bushes. There was no light in any of the windows. It didn't surprise me. It was late, after all, and people were asleep. Though were there people here at all? Suddenly, lightning flashed, and I caught a glimpse of a silhouette on the road. It was tall, I would even say lanky. Its arms seemed longer than a normal person's, and it was dressed in rags. At the moment of enlightenment in the street, after the lightning, it ran towards the house nearest to me. All this happened literally in a matter of moments. I thought maybe because of poor visibility and fatigue, I had imagined that it was some kind of monster. Surely it was a man fleeing from the hail and running to his house, I explained to myself. Great. So in this God-forsaken place, there are people, and I can arrange with them for a night's lodging. I didn't want to get out of the car. It was raining so hard that even if you stayed outside for 30 seconds, you would get soaked to the skin. But there was nowhere to go. Sleeping in the car was not an option at all. I drove as close as possible to the house where the man ran to. I took my purse and money in case the owners asked me to pay for the night, and, having gathered my strength, I jumped out of the car. I ran toward the front door of the house under the porch. I got soaked. It was instantly cold and dank. Yes, the weather in early October is just something. How does it go? The weather doesn't have bad weather? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. The porch I found myself under was leaking, but it was better than standing in the pouring rain anyway. I knocked on the door. Masters? Anybody home? Silence. I knocked again. Nothing happens. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't open. What do I do? Running to another house would mean getting wet and very likely getting sick. No, I don't want that. Maybe we should go around the house and there'll be another door. Hmm, I'd have to scout it out. With that plan in mind, I followed the wall of the house around the corner, taking a fleeting glance out the window. For a second, I thought I saw some movement there. Through a thicket of impenetrable bushes, I made my way to the back of the house. There was indeed a door here, and it faced the vegetable garden. Although I'm not sure these standing crosses were a vegetable garden. So, wait, crosses? Why would there be crosses here? The backyard of this house looked more like an old cemetery than a vegetable garden. Something was wrong here. I didn't have time to think about what I had seen because the door behind me opened with a wild creaking sound. Without thinking, I ducked inside. The door closed. Must be a draft. The house smelled musty, damp, and kind of musty. Well, at least now the rain wouldn't bother me. I picked up my phone and turned on the flashlight, noticing that the phone had 15% charge left. I started waving the flashlight around the room. A table, a chair, a mug, plates. Yep, I'm in the kitchen. I remembered that I'd barged into the house uninvited, and I should at least let the owners know I was here. Masters, would you accept a guest for the night? If you want, I can give you some money. There was silence, and only the sound of drops on the roof broke it. So, if there was no one here, maybe I could spend the night unnoticed, and if the owners came, I could explain everything to them kindly. Okay, here's the plan. We need to find a bed at least. We can't sleep on the floor. I couldn't find a bed in the kitchen, so I had to get inside the house. The floor creaked loudly under my footsteps. The atmosphere was not good. Night, an old house with its own cemetery in the backyard, a creaky floor. I thought of all the horror movies combined. A chill ran down my spine. I walked through the kitchen and into a small room. There was a huge clock on the wall. You know, the one that chimed every hour with how many hours of time it was. It looked very old and the clocks were a bit smoky. Also in this room, I could see a table with some rags on it, stained with earth or something else. The room was in a terrible state. The wallpaper had fallen off the walls, the ceiling was smeared with sweat, and the room as a whole was ghastly in appearance, and the floor was smeared with dry dirt. There was a sprung bed next to the table. Its headboard was very rusty, suggesting that no one lived in this house at all. No one would sleep on such an old bed. No one but me. Sleep came on unexpectedly. Of course I did. I'd been sleep deprived for a whole work week. Plus I'd been on the road for over 5 hours. Yes, these 30 kilometers to the cottage turned out to be much longer. Without much ado, realizing that the house was probably abandoned and the owners would not come, I sat down on the bed, not at all afraid that it would collapse and I would fall to the floor, breaking through the rotten boards and falling into the cellar. I wondered if there was a cellar. Well, the bed didn't fall apart. That's a good sign. I closed my eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Somehow the fear had completely disappeared. I woke up to a strange sound. It was as if someone was walking in the kitchen and the floor creaked under his footsteps. Opening my eyes and trying to figure out what I was doing here, I sat up on the bed and shouted, "Is anyone here?" The footsteps have stopped. There was obviously someone in there. I got out of bed and went into the kitchen. No one's here. I turned on the flashlight on my phone. The floor was covered in fresh dirt. What the hell is that? What's going around here at night that's so dirty? And where did it go? The thoughts in my head began to jumble with fear. Turning to leave the kitchen, I saw a tall shadow flicker into the room. I ran in there. More dirt. It led toward a small hatch in the floor. Why didn't I see it when I came into this room? Well, should I go in there or what the hell? I haven't fought any evil yet. I sat down on the bed, thinking about what to do next. I could hardly sleep. I didn't want to run to the car either. I had just dried off and it was still raining outside. So I had to get out and find some adventure. I ran in there. More dirt. It led toward a small hatch in the floor. Why didn't I see it when I came into this room? Well, should I go in there or what the hell? I haven't fought any evil yet. I sat down on the bed, thinking about what to do next. I could hardly sleep. I didn't want to run to the car either. I had just dried off and it was still raining outside. So I had to get out and find some adventure. In my bag, I fumbled for my old Swiss knife, at least some kind of weapon. But if it was something otherworldly, he wouldn't help me. I plucked up the courage to go to the hatch. Shall I open it? Why would I do that? What if there's something interesting in there? Yeah, like a ghoul or something. That's interesting. Well, we have to do something, don't we? We have to. Having finished arguing with myself, I started to open the hatch. The handle of the hatch was covered in mud, and it smelled so foul I almost saw my lunch today. It smelled like dead meat. That's out of line. Well, if I'm going to get dirty in it, I've got to finish the job. The hatch is open. I shined my phone down there. Wooden steps going down into the darkness and nothing else to see. Cool. Descending into the unknown. Then I noticed that my phone had 5% charge left on it. Okay, so I go down quickly, look around, send the bad guys to the other side, and go to bed. Sounds like a plan. Just as I bent down to start climbing down, I was suddenly pushed from behind by something and went flying down. Silence. Pain in my head. I'm lying on something hard and unpleasant. Feeling with my fingers, I realized that it was something porous and hard. Bone. It's bone. Instantly, jumping up and shining my flashlight around me, I found that the entire floor of the basement was strewn with bones and human skulls. I was just numb with fear. Where did I fall? Who pushed me? How to get out of here? While my thoughts were sluggishly digesting the aftershock in my head, something stirred in the corner. Something was sitting there eating, judging by the slurping sounds. Suddenly, the sound stopped, and it began to slowly rise up and was probably 2.5 feet tall. Dry, long legs, arms were below the knees, and on the hands sickle-shaped fingers or claws, I can't make out. The head was extremely toothy. It looked like an elongated, nibbled skull. There were no eyes, or I just didn't see them. The ghoul lunged at me with a soul-crushing scream. I dropped my phone, dodged it, and fell. Get up. I have to get up, I mumbled to myself. Instantly, the monster turned around and lunged at me again. This time, I didn't have time to parry, and a razor-sharp claw slashed across my chest. The pain pierced my entire body, and apparently not just mine. The beast, roaring, fell beside me. The Swiss knife was sticking out of its chest. Run! I have to get out of here. I don't have a second knife. I jumped up and started climbing up the stairs, picking up the phone from the floor. Just then, I heard that this ghoul had gotten to his feet and was already running towards me. With all the strength I had left, I climbed the very steep stairs, not thinking that under my feet and hands I had the ground with rotten deadness. Suddenly, I was dragged down by my leg. It was a good thing my shoes had zippers instead of laces. Quickly unzipping it in one movement, the boot stayed with the bastard and it fell down. I opened the hatch. It's already light outside. With a quick movement, taking my bag, I crashed with all my might into the front door, the one that was locked, hoping that I would kick it to hell. Either I didn't weigh enough or I didn't have the strength to accelerate, but the door hit me with a thud and I flew backwards. The deadbolt. There's a deadbolt on the door. I'm blind. I got up quickly, ran to the door, removed the deadbolt, and then I heard a nasty breath behind me. Without looking behind me, I opened the door, ran out of the house, and ran to my car. The rain was over, and fog was drifting over the ground. Getting into the car, I instantly yanked the handbrake off and drove off. I looked in the rearview mirror, and there, all I could see was an old cemetery and no houses. And on the street, there are 5 of these scary creatures looking at me. I finally made it to the cottage. When my friends saw me in the morning, they were almost speechless, dirty, all over the chest bloody cut, without a shoe, all disheveled. I told them everything. My friend looked at me with bewilderment and said, "There's no village there. There's only an ancient cemetery, and it appeared after—" But wait, there was a village there, but it burned down more than 100 years ago. Everyone who lived there died, and they buried all the inhabitants there, in the place where the village burned down. Yeah, I think we'll take a different road home.